Look, I know it's a sci-fi classic, but I'm sorry, I can't even think the title without thinking Rocky Horror Picture Show lyrics. Come on, everybody together. And Francis stars in... Forbidden Planet. Whoa. And I will stop singing before I get busted on copyright nonsense. Yeah! Forbidden Planet. I got commissioned to do this one through the Patreon because, yes, indeed, if there's something you want me to review that you don't think I'm going to get to otherwise, you can grab a Patreon slot, a commission slot, and actually just make me do it. And that has happened this month with the classic 1950s sci-fi film Forbidden Planet. This was a film I did know a little bit about, other than its reference in Rocky Horror Picture Show. I did know that the story, from what I could find, it may never have been acknowledged that it was actually intended as an adaptation of this. But it certainly has a heck of a lot of parallels with the Shakespeare play The Tempest. Basically just being set on a planet instead of an island. So if you know Shakespeare, I could break it down for you very easily. You've got your Prospero and your Caliban, and it's pretty straightforward. But anyways, moving on from that, it's a really seminal film in terms of the degree and the level of both the narrative and visually. It was a benchmark film in a lot of ways. It might have been the first sci-fi film that had absolutely no scene set on Earth in any way whatsoever. It had really cutting edge, for the time, special effects. It had a robot that had a personality. That basically never happened. Robots would show up occasionally in movies, but they were robotic. Robbie the robot has a personality. He's a character. He's not a prop. That was kind of novel for the time. And that particular robot was so effective, he got reused in a number of other stuff, such as the Twilight Zone. Actually, a lot of elements from this got repurposed for the Twilight Zone later on. Recycling. Hollywood did it before it was cool. So, yeah, the thing is, it is 1950s sci-fi. So you do need to be prepared for a certain degree of unintentional camp. But honestly, as far as that goes, it's not nearly as much as I would have thought. I do like some movies from around this time. I love, actually, the Disney film 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which came out a few years before this. So, and this kind of has that mentality. It's not... It has a certain gravitas. It's not coming across as camp because these people don't realize what they're doing is dumb. If it's camp, it's only because it's dated in terms of its effects and whatnot. But overall mentality and presentation and approach, it's surprisingly grounded. And the performance, I think this is the first time I've seen a performance from Leslie Nielson before his career took the trajectory of being the comedic fixture that he became. This was back when he played it straight, and he plays the commander of the ship. So plot-wise, I should get to that. The ship lands on a planet that there is currently only 2 inhabitants on. An old man by the name of Dr. Morbius and his daughter. And they are attended to by Robbie the robot. And Dr. Morbius is trying to warn the rest of them off the planet, saying, look, there is something here. There used to be other people here. They all got killed by this thing. I was never able to stop it. It doesn't come after me and my daughter, but this thing is dangerous. You shouldn't be here. But at the same time, he's got all this highly advanced technology, and they're like, we're not just gonna leave. We kind of need to know what's going on here. First of all, we need to figure out your story, because your story doesn't make total sense. And also, like, this tech, we're not just gonna leave this. And then, of course, there is also the element of crew of men who've been traveling through space for a while, and Francis, being his daughter and being quite striking. And that goes exactly where you think it's going to go. Like, right down to one of the crew members literally saying, hey, I should teach you about kissing. Oy. That said, it was not nearly as cringy as I expected it to be. She had a surprising amount of agency in the whole thing. It was made fairly clear at a number of points that, like, she wants to explore this dynamic. Relationships with men. She's game for this. Now, there's still a certain element of skis to it as far as, the fantasy of the unspoiled, eager virgin, which is basically what she is. And there is a certain amount of, to just the setup. But as far as those setups go, she is not as naive as she could be. Yes, she's never kissed anyone before, but she's also learned. She's read books, she's studied biology, she knows the mechanics. So, she has some base level of knowledge, so it doesn't quite have the taking advantage of a naive person element as strongly as these sorts of things can. So, that was one of those things I expected to be real bad, and it was just kind of, for the time, that's not that bad. There's the actor playing Dr. Morbius, guy by the name of Walter Pidgeon, who I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen him in anything else, but he puts in pretty solid work, given that has to deliver a lot of exposition. The guy's an accomplished actor. He was nominated for Oscars like twice before he did this thing, and he has to talk a lot, and he has to talk a lot of nonsense. But he has one of those voices and deliveries that makes it go down a little bit better. And one of the hallmarks of 50s era sci-fi is a really slow burn. Basically, your typical 50s era sci-fi movie is just really boring for the hour before a monster shows up. And while this is paced very similarly to movies that are very boring up until the monster shows up, it's not nearly as dull, and I think a lot of that just has to do with the actors being of a higher caliber than I'm used to seeing in this kind of film, and also the production values being of a higher caliber. Again, not that high by today's standards, but like I can recognize for when this was made, like, no, they're going the distance with this. And so the slow build does actually feel like character development, relationship building, as opposed to we gotta knock out an hour before we can introduce the monster because we only have so much money to spend on this monster, and if we introduce it right off the bat, they'll see the strings too soon. Which is the vibe you get from other movies of the era that, are sci-fi or horror and have a monster. Because there is a monster in this. Visualized in a very interesting way through basically a form of animation. And they went all out. They got an animator on loan from Disney to help realize this. And it might sound really weird, like, animated? Really? I don't want to say too much about the way that it's done, but I could tell that it was animation. But it's not like it's Roger Rabbit or Mary Poppins or anything like that. No, it's very, very carefully stylized that it works. And it looks otherworldly. It looks alien, which is what it needs to. If you have a particular enjoyment or love of science fiction in general, particularly space set science fiction, especially on film, I think this is something you should see, if only to have an appreciation of sort of the trajectory of the medium and of the storytelling. Because there's plenty of bad sci-fi movies. from around this time. Your Plan 9's from Outer Space, and plenty of other stuff that wasn't that bad, but wasn't good. But you can look at something like this and see how something like this would lead to something like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is generally a better regarded film. And honest truth, I'd watch Forbidden Planet again before I'd watch 2001: A Space Odyssey again. Controversial opinion? I don't know. But it feels like a very important piece of sci-fi storytelling history. But one that's actually enjoyable to watch. Because oftentimes there are films or books or what have you that I recognize are important, but I still don't enjoy. There's a lot of things like that. A lot of the important movies, do I have to watch this? This one, I did enjoy it. I didn't love it. I'm not going to rush out and buy my own copy of it, but as a lover of sci-fi, I feel a little embarrassed that I hadn't watched this before. I feel like I was missing out on a piece of the development of the genre. Because you can see how this was a massive stepping stone to what would come later with things like 2001, to things like Star Trek, the original series. And it's very much a grandfather to those films and those TV shows and those ideas. And it presented them in the best way they had been presented up to that point. Not just going, this is a cheap jack genre. Who cares? No, let's make it look as good as it can. And then people later went, I bet we can make it look even better. And it's important and it is well presented, and maybe because they ape so much from The Tempest, and if you're going to stealing from Shakespeare is a good way to go, maybe that's what elevates the story to a point that it works better than things like This Island Earth, or, other things from the same era that, were good for the time but don't hold up. This holds up pretty decently, all things considered. Forbidden Planet, I did not know what to expect going into this. I'm glad I saw it. Have you ever seen this thing? Do you know it only by reputation? Do you know it at all? Does it actually have a reputation beyond a Rocky Horror Picture Show lyric? Whatever your thoughts are. Drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Whole bunch of stuff to do down there as well. Because likes and subscribes, and there's a bell I hear. It's a thing to hit that, and links to my Patreon if you want to support this, help me pay my bills, and also links to my book, social media, blah blah blah. All that stuff's down below. Click on things. The buttons, they do stuff. Links take you places, or don't. You also don't have to, because at the end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council is adjourned.